All right. Okay. So welcome back. It's been about a month, but we're here to talk about probably one of the big releases of this year, Spider-Man, going through all the film franchises. Thanks,
Yes.
Spence, for coming back.
Thank you, man. And full spoilers for the new movie. So
Yeah, I feel like I feel like that's a necessary thing for what's about to
yeah,
happen. Yeah.
like it was funny because a coworker of mine, it was on Friday. We were hanging out at work, and he had seen it. I hadn't, so we couldn't even really talk about it
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
So
It is a necessary yeah, we're gonna have to go. You feel like I feel like for the third film you have to go into spoilers. You can kind of keep it a little light, but I feel like a lot of the big moments of the film are going to be spoiler alerts in terms of who the antagonists are, what's the drive of the plot of the film. But I feel like that's been pretty on the nose in terms of what promotion was. Hold on, my phone's going off. Just give me a sec.
good.
All right. All right, sorry about that. Yeah, so you're just yeah, I just feel like for this film, there's just a lot more spoiler stuff to talk about than I feel like in the preceding Spider-Man films, if that makes sense. All right. But I think we're just gonna do you want to start chronologically or do you want to start with the most recent? This most recent Spider-Man, then work our way back.
Chronological and build up
right.
to the new one. Because for this, I marathoned all the Spider-Man, live action Spider-Man movies. I had done the same for Avengers Endgame. So this was like easy compared to that.
You're fucking dedicated.
Yeah. I mean, it makes it that much better when you watch and rewatch, everything that leads up to it, everything connects.
Yeah.
But I hadn't seen a few of them though, so it was my first time watching some of them.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it all started with Spider-Man 2002.
Yep, the Sam Raimi trilogy, and kind of nice that he's going to be doing the new Doctor Strange as well. So
Doctor Strange played a big part in the new one, and he's even mentioned in the original Spider-Man 2. Fun fact, Doctor Strange. So yeah, that feels. I'm excited for that for sure. But yeah, actually, fun fact: James Cameron was wrote, eventually morphed into the Spider-Man that we know and love, by Sam Raimi. But originally, because even James Cameron was going to be given partial credit for the story or the script, but he decided not to, because there was that script went through a number of revisions and different writers and stuff.
Yeah, I didn't know that shit. Yeah, and honestly, it just seemed even for that first film that in 2002, it seemed like it was going into development hell for the most part.
Yeah, it was in the works for a while, like a live action Spider-Man movie of some kind. It kept switching hands, and but yeah, it worked out really well actually. It was because it was like Blade, X-Men, and then this Spider-Man movie kind of really ushered in all these new superhero movies in the 20th century or 21st century.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those foundational sort of films. I would even throw the Dark Knight in that as well.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And of course what Iron Man ended up becoming, but that was those kind of films that kind of led to what the blockbuster, I would feel like they're our definitely our modern day major blockbuster films. They're the big events of the year anytime one comes out.
Oh yeah.
But do you remember the first time you saw the first Spider-Man in 2002? Do you have any memories of it?
Yeah, I remember seeing it in theaters and loving it, of course. I remember also the toy of the web shooter toy that you could shoot silly string out of. That was really cool back in the day. And I remember this movie came out the same month as Star Wars Episode 2: Attack of the Clones.
That I didn't realize that because I remember seeing Attack of the Clones in theaters, but I was trying to think if I ever saw Spider-Man in theaters. I don't remember.
Yeah, so I remember those two big movies came out the same month, so that was cool. But I don't remember any specifics, but I remember loving it as a kid.
Mhm.
And what do you think about Tobey Maguire as both Peter Parker and Spider-Man?
So I thought that, to me, like, I mean, it's nostalgia, of course, but I thought that was like the iteration of Spider-Man. Like when I was like 8 when it came out, I didn't like
Mhm.
that was Spider-Man. There was
Yeah,
no
like
like
if
I
you
didn't
didn't
read
grow up
any
on
of the
the
comics.
comics, or yeah,
That was Spider-Man. And I thought
sure.
in terms of performance, it was very fun. And even in Sam Raimi's sort of weird way, it was a little cheesy, like, or like
Yeah,
S camp-esque, but still very
yeah, no,
entertaining blockbuster sort of deal.
yeah. I mean, his style is camp, so there's
Yeah.
definitely a lot of those cheesy moments, or like the
Yeah.
Goblin's costume.
Yeah.
You know,
I felt like that camp moment is also present in the wrestling bout.
oh, for
Yeah,
sure,
because
yeah,
well, like I feel like what the downside of the Tobey Maguire character is that I think he plays an amazing Peter Parker. I think it's
yeah,
up for debate whether he does the Spider-Man wit, because I feel like
sure,
that's
yeah,
something Holland has mastered, like that mid-battle wit that Spider-Man has.
yeah, yeah.
But like,
And that's yeah. I've heard a lot. That's a lot of people do say that
mhm,
he's a good Peter Parker, but not the best Spider-Man, and I
yeah,
I, I can agree with that,
hmm
because he's kind of like he plays a dork very well,
hmm
so in that, like, he's believably a huge dork in school and gets made fun of, even though he's like 26 playing an 18-year-old, but whatever.
hmm
Uh, so he's very he's believable in that role, um and yeah, the camp factor too is present in you got the crazy POV shots from Raimi, and some of the moments and some of the lines and the delivery, but it still
hmm
has a lot of heart.
yeah. And even like on a technical element, like there is some really like there are some like cool like performance stuff. Like I think the
Yeah.
major one for me is actually like when Tobey Maguire has the tray. You know that scene?
Oh yeah,
That
yeah,
was yeah, they did that like over 100 times and he did that
yeah.
practically. I'm just like, okay, like that's a fucking salute. And I just imagine that like they're still on the shot with Kirsten Dunst, and she's got a line after that. Like, I would have been pissed if I was Tobey Maguire and I made that, and like she fucked up the line because it was
Maybe
still
they
in that
just would
same.
have cut,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
yeah,
I would imagine they would have, but I feel like the fact
yeah.
that I felt the fact that like it kind of stuck around for like an extra 3 seconds just adds a little bit more of that kind of like this shot
Like,
was
whoa,
real, like
yeah,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, for sure.
Uh, but uh, but and not necessarily an important detail, but something I didn't notice until like years after the fact is that Joe Manganiello played Flash. I didn't know
Oh
that
yeah,
either. Flash Thompson.
yeah.
I'm like this super fucking like beefy nerd is like this like high school bully.
Yeah, that is hilarious how he's like super into D&D in real life, and like uh yeah, but I mean, I guess he played that high school bully role. He's very like typical high school bully. But he looks even older than Maguire. He looks like he's
hmm
30 in that movie.
hmm Oh, but
Yeah.
what is it? Another fun fact that's in like, well, it's in Sam Raimi's trilogy, but like this is a fun fact in Sam Raimi movies is that the same model car that he had in Evil Dead makes an appearance in almost all Sammy Raimi films. Like Uncle Ben's car is also the same car
Oh.
that was in Evil Dead.
Huh. I didn't know that. That's
Yeah,
cool.
so if you look into like the Evil Dead intro and then like you look at Uncle Ben's car, it's the same model car.
Oh wow.
And then
Huh.
like yeah, you have like
Funny.
and then like there's also like Bruce Thompson, Bruce Campbell makes an
Oh yeah.
appearance. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and he plays a different character in each one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if he's like he's probably not the same character, but I wonder if you try to connect all those characters, because he's the announcer in the wrestling in the wrestling match, and then he's the asshole chauffeur in Spider-Man 2, and then he's the
Yeah.
French
Yeah. He like
host
the
at the restaurant
yeah,
in
exactly.
Spider-Man 3.
hmm Yeah. I'm sure
Yeah,
you could try to figure out something, but like I think but like they're just different characters.
yeah, yeah. What do you think about Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin?
Awesome. I mean, the costumes campy. It feels like Power Rangers, but like his performance, and that was the first time I ever saw Willem Dafoe. So like
Sure.
I I didn't really see Willem Dafoe until like in other stuff till like maybe I was a lot older, like I saw Platoon, but Dafoe I thought was awesome in the first Power, and I almost said Power Ranger. For in Power Rangers, he was amazing. But no, in Spider-Man, I thought he killed it, but it was again in that Raimi style that like it's believable, but just slightly campy at the same time. Like like Goblin persona was just like it's a little cheesy.
Jekyll and
like,
Hyde kind of thing.
Yeah. But I was
and they played that up a lot in the new movie.
Definitely, but I was totally on board, and I think like that was one of my like glean moments in the new Spider-Man movie that like Willem Dafoe like, and honestly, I love that Willem Dafoe has made a significant like body of work this past 10 years, like a significant body.
Well, it's funny because originally I saw some screen tests of the Green Goblin, and they were gonna have straight up like a mask that was like, I don't know if it was supposed to be actually be a goblin, but it wasn't just like a helmet. It was a straight up like mask of like an actual goblin, like closer to the comics. And yeah, it wasn't. It's better that they went for the what they did in the movie, because it looked a little too cheesy. I mean, Raimi's got his style, but that looked a little too far gone. But yeah, I love his. I mean, like Willem Dafoe's great at playing just like crazy characters, and I love like his outbursts in the movie too. Like I love, my favorite line of like almost the entire Spider-Man saga is when he's being fired from his own company, from the board of directors.
Do you know how much I sacrificed? I laugh at that. I was watching that before this too.
It's so good. It's like, and it's funny. I watched that scene on YouTube, and someone commented saying that they gave time codes of like he goes through the 5 stages of grief in this one scene. Yeah, but he's excellent in that role. And also, that makes me think that I remember at the beginning of the movie, the way it's paced, it's very efficiently done. It's like it feels like everything is laid out. Like each scene feels very purposeful, very intentful, and like seeing Spider-Man and Green Goblin, the 2 scenes where they're really like born are back to back, and I think it progresses very well.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I'm like, yeah, that actually is paced up very well, because like basically the origin of the Green Goblin, that whole like gas scene was basically where like Peter was having that night, his kind of like his becoming moment where like he like passed out.
Yeah,
so I get it. But yeah, like no, I could agree with that. Yeah, like now that you mention it, yeah, it does seem like a very tight way to do it. And I also like there's like a bit of like CGI trickery that like I feel like that was very overlooked in the since 2002, like where they kind of did like a body double for his face, where like he was like super scrawny, and then like in the next scene you have like him like completely jacked. It just kind of seemed like the predecessor for like Steve Rogers.
They did that.
I mean, they would have to. I mean, like there's no way they were gonna wait like a year.
I thought maybe like they filmed something before he got jacked and then afterward. But yeah, I mean that having a body double makes sense.
Yeah, I mean that to me would have to be the most like cost-effective way, and like just because like I think, because even though I mean it was only for like one scene, but like I'm just trying to figure out like if they were to do it practically, I don't know how they would be able to pull it off unless they actually were willing to wait for it. So like there had to have been a body double that would have was preceding like what would ultimately become like the more polished Steve Rogers. But I think what helped is that it was literally just his like neck down. Like it wasn't like his full body work. They had to make him shorter and shit for like Captain, and like he wasn't really doing that much. It was just in slow motion, so like they could really really focus in on it, and it was just for a single scene. So I think that's what kind of helped them. It's just we weren't trying to do too much movement, so I think they were just really able to hone it in well.
Yeah, true. Oh, J. Jonah Jameson.
J.K. Simmons, what a fucking guy. What a guy.
Yeah.
Honestly, like that's probably like we'll go into slightly later, but like my favorite moment in Far From Home. That's my favorite moment. Was the like and I like but he's a scene stealer. He steals.
He's so good in that role that's the one role that they did not recast in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
The only one. Like you're talking about like every significant role. Like, oh my god, it's just it's that fucking scene. Like he's a criminal. Like or like he's just so fucking witty too. Like his rhythm, like script, just like it's so perfect. And he looks like the comic book character, to a T.
The casting it's like one of the best castings of an adaptation like ever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I also want to manage time pretty quickly, so I think I'm going to jump into two. If that's quick, that's cool.
Well, before I just want to talk about the ending, the climax of this first Spider-Man movie.
Mm-hmm.
I love how brutal it is because they're mostly just punching each other, like it's very physical, and it's in this abandoned building, and it's very it's visceral. So I appreciate how it's like that. Yeah,
I could agree with that, and it's like even like to the point where like I feel like the PG-13 now has gotten a little bit too PG. They won't show any sort of blood, but even like they'll show like the stab wound and then like the blood dripping out of the mouth and then like
a little bit of blood,
yes, and then like even like I think I definitely agree with that. Like and definitely there's much more like a hand-to-hand combat sort of deal, like when they're in that kind of that kind of like bent down place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we can move on to Spider-Man 2.
Yeah. So like I'm just trying to like be mindful of time, but I think Spider-Man 2, if it's not my favorite I think it's got to be my favorite Spider-Man movie. Like we'll go into the other ones shortly, but
the Empire Strikes Back of the Spider-Man movies.
It really is, and it might be my favorite superhero movie, but it also it holds a special place in my heart because it's still like I saw this film at a drive-in theater. It's still like the only time I've ever been to a drive-in theater in 2004. I saw this with a double feature with White Chicks.
Oh, wow.
But like I remember seeing this in a drive-in theater and just like I was with my dad, my stepmom, and then my sister, and like I was just blown away that like I'd never been to a drive-in theater. It still sticks with me. And and that was just like, and while like you don't necessarily remember like the movie that well, you still have the memory of like the environment that you're in when you saw it.
And the feeling that you had,
And I will say, like, I think Octavius was like the best villain of the Sammy trilogy. I thought he you can argue casting wise, maybe Willem Dafoe was better, or like we'll go into maybe the Sandman. I thought was a good casting choice, but I think in terms of like how they developed the character, like their choices, like the kind of arc he had. I felt like it was the best villain of that trilogy.
Yeah, I think it's between him or Green Goblin. But I can't argue with that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And also the effects with the arms, that was mostly practical. So that was really well done. And especially the hospital scene, which is very Evil Dead-esque, very horror. That was really well done.
Yeah, it was mostly just like puppeteer work to get those arms working, and and I feel like that's something that I was kind of like, slightly disappointed in the new one where he made his return, Alfred Molina, but still like
I didn't even notice. I wasn't even thinking of like, oh yeah, that's CGI,
Yeah, I mean, like I felt like it was just there were just times where I felt like it was just a little bit too fluid. If that makes sense. That like, but again, like you're talking about like 2004, opposed from like 15 years after the fact. So like, of course, like you're gonna go with the most cost-effective route because you have to pay because you can just have Alfred Molina on a blue screen just on wires, or with like just him, or you can pay like him on wires plus like 6 other guys to puppeteer the wires.
Yeah, and there's so many different kinds of effects they got to do for that, and with like the just timing and everything. They're trying to pump these movies out, so it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
But with Spider-Man 2, I love how, well, because the whole thing about Spider-Man is he's always trying to balance out his life as a hero with his personal life. And like this movie in particular, it's like it's just like his personal life is like in shambles, and he's trying to constantly juggle everything at once. And it really plays into it with his relationship with MJ, his relationship with his aunt, with school, having a job. It's everything at once. So I think it really that was a good balancing act in terms of the pacing and the writing. So that was really well done.
Yeah, and I think like this was most like a comic book sort of sense. Like, this is like what we expect Peter to be in. Like, he's just like he's an everyday student, but like, struggles because he's trying to be Spider-Man. And like it's his it's that kind of ideal zone of comfort that like Stanley set out to be. Like, I mean, like I think he originally wrote it where he was in high school doing it, but like I feel like it's more believable that he was in college, to be quite honest. I feel like it's just a little bit more believable. But but even then, like I feel like just kind of like dealing with his everyday struggles, just like, oh, he struggled with paying rent. Oh shit, he like, he's not doing super well in school, he's not doing well at his job, or like he's stuck, like his relationship is pretty much non-existent. So
well, I mean, in the last one, he the girl that he loved, he said he can't be with because he didn't want to put her in danger. So it's like but then they're kind of playing around with that in this one, and then she's like, well, what about my choice in this? So I think the romance was done the best in this one too.
Yeah, I agree. And I will just say, like, probably my favorite scene in this film, which ended up being like probably the most hilarious scene in Spider-Man 3, is definitely the raindrops keep falling on my head scene. I think that whole sequence might be my favorite scene in Spider-Man 2.
Which one is that?
Oh, like when like Peter like stops being Spider-Man and he's got like the raindrops keep falling on my head. That whole sequence where like life is good. Like he stopped being Spider-Man. Like I think that might be my favorite scene in that movie. Like to be quite honest, like I don't know. Like I think it's just like it's Sam Raimi just kind of going for it. Just like this, I'm gonna do this. Like this is kind of my style. It's like campy, but like this is like his ultimate kind of moment of happiness that he can finally have. He could just stop. He doesn't have to like worry about it.
In the next one, he kind of jumped the shark with that kind of style.
Well, like it's become meme culture now.
Oh yes, oh yeah. We'll get to that when we get to Spider-Man 3. But what else about Spider-Man 2?
Well,
yeah, I mean, it's almost flawless. And I love that the train scene is really good.
Yes. Joey Diaz has a little cameo in it.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a number of comedians that make cameos throughout the Raimi films.
Yeah, you're right.
But like I love how he's almost like a Christ figure. Like people are like body surfing him back, and he's all like passed out and everything. And it's like I feel like all the Raimi movies have like people of New York coming together. Is a big thing. I mean, it's like post 9/11, so like that was like a factor. But like everyone being like they see his face, but they're like, all right, we won't tell. It's a very beautiful moment, despite Tobey's ridiculous facial expressions.
Well, like at least like his pose fits like that like the theme, like the subtext of like it's supposed to be like sort of like a Christ savior figure, and like with him with his webs like up against the train, it looks like he's being crucified. So it looks very much like where it's kind of having that undertone where he's having that moment, then just being kind of like surfed, like, so just it makes sense. We haven't really talked about him yet, but like we haven't really discussed much about Harry Osborn, James Franco.
Sure.
Him yet. I feel I think this is probably his most like pivotal time in the trilogy. I feel like the first one was like serviceable. They didn't really have that much to really have him do. I feel like it was just like, it was just like, oh, he's just MJ's girlfriend, just to kind of like as like a sort of anti-hero to Peter, but not really at the same time. And then like
Yeah.
it was really just for like the end is why he was there.
Yeah, I like his arc throughout the trilogy
Mhm.
overall, and yeah, this one is kind of where things really start to change with him,
Mhm.
in regards to his relationship with Peter. So yeah, it was a good build up, to him kind of becoming the new Goblin. Even though I think in the third one it's a little the way his redemption arc was a little too easy, but I think the build up was good, and I like how it was gradually built up over 3 movies, as opposed to Amazing Spider-Man 2, where it's like, oh hey, Harry Osborn's a thing, and now he's evil. But
Mhm.
but yeah, I liked how Raimi took his time with that character.
Mhm. Fair. Any other notes before we go on to 3?
We can go on to 3,
All right.
which I saw for the first time recently.
Wait. You haven't seen it?
For the first time recently, marathoning, I saw it. Yeah.
Wow. Like that was
Yeah.
such a big film. It was what, 2007? That was such a big film
Yep.
back then.
Yep.
Yeah. Shit.
Yeah, I
But
just didn't go get around to seeing it.
shit.
But
I remember
I
seeing
mean,
that in theaters with my mom. Yeah.
it's funny because it kind of has a reputation of being bad, but I thought it was okay. I think it had a lot of the things that made the other 2 films good. It was just bogged down by too much going on. Like they had 3 villains. If they just only had, if they obviously you needed Harry Osborn as the new Goblin, but if they just had Sandman or Venom, I think it could have been more focused, because I like the character dynamics between all the characters. But if you took away one of the characters, it would allow the other characters to be their relationships to be a little more deeper.
Mhm.
Um, or you could have had the symbiote suit for Spider-Man, but maybe save the actual Venom with Eddie Brock until the next movie.
Yeah. Like I could agree with that. And sorry, briefly backtracking like for a sec. We haven't discussed really Aunt May, and I know in
Oh, sure.
Spider-Man 2 they kind of left that on the hook whether she knew that like Peter was Spider-Man.
It is ambiguous, but it's
Yeah,
kind of
and
hinted that she knows.
yeah, but then like it was kind of dismissed in the third one. So like when I was young, I accepted it, but like as I'm older, I'm like it's a little disappointing that like because I would have at least like because it just felt like okay they dismissed that she doesn't know, they like made that a definitive choice, but like I felt like I would have liked to kept
Sure.
it ambiguous, that I'm like I'm
Yeah,
okay with
yeah.
her like not fully knowing, but I feel like there's got to be that little there's got to be that nudge that
Yeah.
like she knows.
Maybe if there's a fourth one, they could have done that.
Yeah,
Uh, but I mean, she was really good in the role though,
yeah.
as Aunt May.
Hmm.
Although she's kind of more of a like, because like the Aunt May and Uncle Ben of Toby's movies are like, they seem more like grandparents than aunt and uncle, just their
Yeah,
age. I mean, it's
yeah.
not that big of a deal, but minor nitpick. But no, she's really, but especially in Spider-Man 2, when he tells her that he didn't, or the guy who killed his or Uncle Ben, he basically let him go initially, but then he went after him and killed him, and like she was just like, she just left, like she didn't know how to react. But like I felt it was a
Mhm.
very human, like realistic response, where like she just didn't know how to react.
Yeah, it's not like it doesn't go into that Hollywood moment like it's not your fault. Like no, I feel like that's definitely like the best route to go, and that it felt unresolved in that moment. And I felt like yeah, that's fair. Like I agree. It just felt much more real, and it's a believable moment
Mhm.
that like that
Yeah, yeah.
happened. And it was necessary for that. I felt like that was a scene that like that felt very like captivating. Like I feel like I'm just
Yeah.
throwing out this buzzword, but it
Well, yeah,
was
well,
like
because it,
it was a great moment to watch, especially if you're like you've seen the first one, and like it just
yeah,
felt like it was a lot of build up for this moment.
yeah, because you could tell he really wanted to get that off his chest, and
Hmm.
him confessing it was a big character moment.
Hmm.
But back to Spider-Man 3,
Hmm.
um, the bully Maguire uh, part. What do you feel? How do you feel about? Because I think, because in addition to, I think that if there's 3 things they should have done to make the movie better. Take out one of the villains, and then by that you can make the relationships deeper. But then just the him being an asshole, I felt like just I get why it was done. It was just very not Tobey Maguire, which I think was the point, but it felt like it felt way over the top. And I know Sam Raimi kind of it was Sam Raimi in a lot of ways, but I think it just went way too far.
No, I agree that it was over the top, but I do feel like there is the essence of Tobey Maguire where like he can be that kind of aggressive sort of like sorry, my phone's going off. I feel like there is that essence of Tobey Maguire where he can do that, like he can be that like aggressive little thing, like, and I feel like he has shown that a bit in his Celebrity. Like, have you heard his whole poker, his whole poker backstory? Yeah. He's got that, like, and I think that I feel like I felt like him and Raimi just couldn't really find the right tone for that character, for that side of the character. But I felt like if Maguire had if him and Raimi had another shot at it, I felt like they would have gotten it right. But I agree, it was just too over the top. But in terms of like him being an asshole, I know that like I'm just trying to think if there are specific shades about it. Like you can say like maybe the only moment I could think of is when he's on the phone and he's with like his landlord's daughter, and he's just like, "Go get me some more cookies." Like there's subtle moments like that, but I just know Tobey Maguire could have pulled it off. But it's just like the way it was just done, it was just too.
Yeah, the direction should have been different. I think the overall him being an asshole with the symbiote suit, that made sense. You know, it just they should have portrayed it differently.
I think it also bothered me that like he thought he was cool. Like they were trying to make him like a cool guy. I'm just like, no, he's still like
well, I think it might be part of the point is that like Tobey Maguire Spider-Man trying to be cool doesn't work on purpose.
Yeah.
I think that might have been part of the whole thing is that like this isn't him. Like this is not him at all. You know, I think him almost not fitting that role is kind of, I feel like the point in a way.
Yeah, fair. Like, yeah, I can agree with that. But I think it's just like when people like to criticize that is just because like the whole dance sequence is just cringy. Like essentially their sequel to like the raindrops keep falling on my head. It's just again, it's a meme culture. But I don't like people like, I think you mentioned this. I don't think Spider-Man 3 is a bad movie. I think it's completely watchable. There are just many flaws. There are just flaws in it.
Yeah.
I will say this. The discussing main plot stuff, definitely the superhero, like if there are maybe just like 2 villains, like if there were just Harry and then like either Venom or Sandman, definitely. But my other thinking is I thought the subplot with Mary Jane was a bit convoluted, if that makes sense. Like where she's just like, oh, I'm going back to Harry sort of deal. And it just felt really rushed because they only had that one scene when they were cooking that omelet. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of.
But I was under the impression that she was forced to break up with Peter.
Oh no. She was, but it just felt like a very much a convoluted thing where it just felt like, she was very much getting back with Harry for that split second.
Well, I felt like that kind of, I mean, because like right when she was like, oh, we shouldn't do, like she kind of had this moment of like, oh, we shouldn't be doing this. I felt like it made sense because Peter kind of was having a big ego, and then the thing with Gwen Stacy, and then she also lost that her Broadway gig, and you know she also just wasn't doing too well. So her kind of going back to Harry, kind of, to me that actually made sense, considering everything she was going through. So I was okay with that.
Yeah. Okay. I think it was just one of those scenes that like, it was just, again, like you're packing in too much, because I felt just like, again, like this is a film where I feel like, they were just trying to pack in like too much in too short a time frame.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like, and I'm just trying to think of like things to trim, what I think was really my thing.
Well, here's the thing about with Harry Osborn. So he attacks Peter early in the movie, and then he has amnesia, which is a plot device to just get him out of the plot or out of the story for like the middle part of it, basically. Kind of like what they did with Doctor Strange in the new one. I felt like it was kind of a similar thing. Like, let's get this character out of the narrative, but they'll come back. I felt like I like the tension between the Harry and Peter. I just felt like his redemption arc was way too easy. It was like, oh, his butler just told him what actually happened. And it's like, okay, why didn't this guy say that before? And like, it felt like too much of an easy switch.
Yeah, I can agree. And even then, I feel like, Harry would still have some bitterness towards Peter for like blowing a grenade in his face.
Yeah, exactly. So it feels like I wish, like the other Spider-Man villains, it was Peter coming in confrontation with Harry and them having a discussion of some kind. I think that would have been much more powerful than he just hears it from his butler, who we barely even know. I did like him teaming. Oh, go
on. No. I mean, like, I'm going back to Spider-Man 2 for a moment, and like that, like you're hoping for a switch, like kind of like a transformation like that, how it was with Otto Octavius, just like Peter having a conversation with him. You were hoping the same thing would be for Harry, but he ended up. Exactly. But he did have it with the Sandman. But you expected the same with Harry.
I felt like, well, I liked how he kind of like Peter was able to forgive himself for the actions he had done. So then he was able, therefore, forgive the Sandman for killing his uncle. I thought that was nice, even though the Sandman kind of felt like somewhat one note overall.
Agreed, but again, I thought that was a great casting choice to have Thomas Hayden Church play him.
Yeah. I think all these movies are well casted for sure.
Well, I think we're gonna discuss a controversial casting choice of. I think we know who we're talking about. Topher Grace.
Oh, I thought he was good.
I just thought like I felt like I mean, if you're looking for Sam Raimi, I guess he was just a bit too cheesy. But like, I feel like when I'm looking for like him as Eddie Brock, I thought was okay. But when it's just kind of like the morph between Venom and Brock, where like where the symbiote just kind of reveals his face, he's just like, my Spidey sensor thing. I'm just like, okay, I don't buy it. I thought it was just a little bit like, okay, not quite, because I was so I'm just used to that 70s show, and I feel like he just doesn't have that. He just doesn't have like an intimidating presence, which I felt like you needed for Venom. It's okay to have it for Brock. I felt like he was a good Brock, but it was just one of those things where I felt,
because he's almost like a Peter Parker without the morality,
Yeah, exactly. And I don't really buy his persuasion abilities, if that makes sense, because his ability, like when he was like persuading the Sandman to like join his side to kind of beat Spider-Man, I'm like, I don't think I quite believe the.
I mean, I feel like they had mutual interests, so yeah, I felt like that was fine.
Yeah, I think it was just performance-wise is what I'm thinking, like for Topher Grace.
Fair, but I do like how Harry teams up with Spider-Man at the end. Although it's like there's three villains, but like the three villains like barely connect. It's almost like it's like three different stories with the villains.
Fair. But yeah,
but the ending fight was cool. I enjoyed the finale.
No, I agree, and I feel like the ending of that with I'm gonna bring it up with J. Jonah Jameson. His appearance is kind of mirrored in the most recent Spider-Man movie. I feel like his whole like costume is very much mirrored of how like oh no, is that Spider-Man 2? Is that Spider-Man 3 where he's in like the fedora, the suit? Because I feel like it's very much like the same costume he had in both films.
In Spider-Man, in the third one when he's outside. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So like I feel like that was a very much on the nose reference to Raimi's trilogy. It's just like that specific costume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I liked how it ended with him and MJ slow dancing, and that was the end of the. I mean, there's supposed to be another one, but I feel like that end scene wasn't a bad way to end it wasn't the intended end to that specific franchise, but it was. I thought that was a nice bow that they tied with that.
Yeah, I feel like it was appropriate to end on 3, and I know they were trying to get a 4th one, but like Raimi didn't like the script; they couldn't get it quite right, and I think they were also trying to set up Connors. They were trying to set up his professor.
Because he appeared in 2 and 3. So
yeah, but like
although Vulture was going to be the villain of number 4.
That's what I heard, but like but I didn't.
John Malkovich was going to play him.
Interesting. That does seem like a very same Raimi choice for that sort of role, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I could see it. But so do you want to move on to the Andrew Garfield movies?
Yeah, so like I'm probably gonna lean on you more about this because I haven't actually really seen them in full. I've just seen bits and pieces.
Yeah, I watched the two of them for the first time recently. It's funny. I remember when the first one came out. It came out in 2012, and I remember the Dark Knight Rises came out like the same summer. And I remember I was more excited for the Amazing Spider-Man for some reason, but I never ended up seeing it. I don't know why, but I felt it was okay. I felt like it just felt like an unnecessary reboot, I guess, because they try to make it different. You know, like the death of Peter's parents are kind of like a factor in the movie, and they're working for Oscorp, and there's kind of a conspiracy related to that. And they're the ones that developed, you know, the genetically enhanced spiders, and so, and you know, you could tell they were trying to do some different things, but it also just felt unnecessary. And you know, Andrew Garfield wasn't bad. I didn't buy him as a nerd too much. You know, they say, you know, a lot of people say Tobey Maguire's a good Peter Parker, Andrew Garfield's a good Spider-Man, Tom Holland's kind of the best of both. Because you know, Andrew Garfield's more quippy and more kind of having more fun in the when he's in the suit. But you know, I enjoyed his portrayal overall. It's definitely, you know, that entire that you know, comparing the two versions, it's like you can tell they were trying to do as much as they could to be different, but it still just felt like an unnecessary reboot. And the Lizard was like whatever. I didn't really care for him.
Yeah, like I don't really have much to really speak about just because I hadn't really seen them. But my only comment would again be about Andrew Garfield. And even I'm kind of quoting Kevin Smith a bit, is that Kevin Smith has said, like, you know, like I feel like the idea is just like, yeah, Peter Parker should be a nerd, and he felt that like Andrew Garfield was too dreamy. Like I would fuck Andrew Garfield, like, but the point is just like you're not necessarily gonna feel that way with Peter Parker. So it was just like,
that's a good point.
Yeah. So like, while yes, his casting of maybe like being the Spider-Man character was appropriate, just him being Peter Parker just wasn't quite right.
Yeah. But I think his chemistry with Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, I think that was one of the best parts about both movies. I felt like their relationship was sometimes more realistic feeling than Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst in the original movies. So I felt like that was well done. And you know, the action scenes were cool, and I liked the suit. But yeah, it just kind of felt like I remember even the first Amazing Spider-Man, the pacing was like weird. I don't know. It wasn't doing it for me. I mean, it was fine. It was okay. But I kind of came away from it being like, eh.
Yeah.
And then the second one was, I actually, in some ways, I kind of liked it better, even though it was in some ways worse. Because you know, Sony did not learn their lesson from Spider-Man 3. Don't have too many villains, because they had 3 villains again.
Yeah, they had the Jamie Foxx. Yeah, they had like what? The Jamie Foxx character. No, I'm just trying to list them. They had the Jamie Foxx character, right? Electra. They had Harry wasn't in it, was he? Like, I know he made some appearance, but like, no, was he like the main villain? I don't
know who's the main villain. He is the Green Goblin in it. So he's one of the villains, and then Paul Giamatti is the Rhino.
Right. Fuck, Jesus. Who's
only in like the beginning and the end of the movie, so he doesn't really play much of a factor into the main plot. But yeah, the Harry Osborn thing was rushed. You know, and the design was pretty silly too, because he wasn't in the first movie, and then he just introduced into this one, and then it's like, oh yeah, him and Peter were friends as kids. And then, you know, because like Sam Raimi took his time, you know, developing Harry Osborn's arc, but then this one, it's just like he's introduced and then later he's the villain, and it just happens too fast. And then the Jamie Foxx Electro thing is like he's like a super nerd in the beginning, like the most cliched, like, you know, with the glasses and the teeth, and you know, everyone's pushing
I think
around.
That's the funniest thing that people comment on, is just this whole is the gap tooth. Like,
yeah, and it's just like, yeah, and then him being blue, it didn't, and then his motivations were weak, and Yeah, I felt like that was just wasn't well done either. And although I did like, and I also, but I did like the relationship between Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker. I thought was also well done, and and because Peter Parker made a promise to her father when he died that he would stay away from her because he's Spider-Man.
And
But they kind of went back and forth. Oh, go on.
Oh no, I was gonna say, like, I remember that from the ending of the first Spider-Man, that like saying like, I don't believe in keeping promises or something like that, or that was one of the ending lines. It was something similar to that. Sort of paraphrasing.
Yeah, but he's kind of like not sure if I mean, he still wants to be with her, but because of his promise and just also him as Spider-Man, he's kind of like, he's not sure so I like how they go back and forth on that, and then, but then I like how she ends up dying actually.
I thought that was a good choice in that film. Like, from what I've heard, like that's like just to like to kill off like that, like you're like, I mean, but that was a big part in the comics as well. What was essentially like kind of killing off your main character. Was like killing off the main character, one of the main characters.
Well, I like how there's actual consequences for him, because it feels like, well, in the first two Tom Holland movies, there really aren't that many consequences for Spider-Man. It feels like his girlfriend dying was a big deal too, and I liked how they played off of that in the new movie, where he was saying how that just made him like bitter for a while, and he wasn't pulling his punches, and I appreciated that element. It felt like, all right, actual sacrifices and consequences happen. I appreciated that.
Yeah, and honestly, I felt like that's something that they needed in this Spider-Man, because actually thinking about it, like, I felt like Spider-Man has a ghost. Like, do you know the like writing what a ghost is? Have you heard of that writing?
Uncle Ben, or explain.
Yeah, so like in writing, like characters have what's known as a ghost. It's basically something in their past that they think they're responsible for, like that it's their fault. Like, so like for instance, like I'll relate it to like Aang feels so like, have you ever seen The Last Airbender?
The the live action?
No, the cartoon. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter, but like
I've seen the beginning of the show, yeah.
Okay, well, like a ghost, for example, in that film, in that show, is Aang abandoned his duties as the Avatar, and because he did that and froze himself, he then led to the destruction of his people and like led to a 100-year war. So that's his ghost. It's just something that like it may not directly be his fault, but he feels responsible for it.
Sure. Okay.
That's something that the Spider-Man character has and has carried in each of the three films, especially the most recent one. Like, it's going to be carried into the future, but like definitely in the first Spider-Man with Uncle Ben, then with Gwen, then now like now with this new one with Aunt May. So it feels like definitely like what you mentioned, that like they really needed something like that to kind of like, really make Spider-Man like letting them know there are consequences. And I think that was probably something that they really wanted to shoehorn into the most recent starter into that story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm glad that that was kind of it was unexpected, because a lot of these superhero franchises, they don't kill off characters because sequels and everything. So I'm glad they did that. But then they were trying to set up Sinister Six at the end of the movie, and as Amazing Spider-Man 2, and it was just it wasn't that great. So and then they rebooted him into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. 2 years later. They did not waste time with that.
Yeah. Well, like Sony knew that they saw the critic reviews in the audience. Were like, okay, this kind of sucked. And like the MCU was becoming like the thing that it was literally like the Avengers was at that time. Like, I think they came out the same year, Amazing Spider-Man 2 and the Avengers, right? Or were they like a year difference?
Amazing Spider-Man, the first Amazing Spider-Man was 2012, same year as Avengers.
Okay. So like they knew that like the Avengers is here to stay. They knew that. And like we just kind of fluffed it up, and we need this. And like Marvel was probably giving them like a pretty generous deal with like if we were able to get Spider-Man. So I definitely get that Sony.
Spider-Man is like the last Marvel character that the movie rights were owned by a different company, because they had sold off all the rights for a while, but they gradually, through different means, they were getting the rights back for all the characters. But Sony still has the rights for Spider-Man, so I guess both companies saw that it would be mutually beneficial to collaborate. So, yeah, so it's worked out for the audience very well.
Yeah, and I think what's like what definitely helped out like the new Spider-Man is that they didn't go into an origin story. They just kind of like, okay, he's already Spider-Man. Yeah. I think that's what was kind of nice and like kind of refreshing. Where like
it'd be too redundant, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that was kind of a downside to a bit of like sort of Batman kind of reboots. Is that like, okay, we need an origin story, or like, no, let's just like we already know what it is. Let's just get into it. So
yeah, I think at this point, with the name Biggest Spider-Man, it's like everyone knows Spider Bite, Uncle Ben.
Yeah. But what's so like, but this is what's hilarious. So like, I just said that like, yes, they don't need to know, but because we already know it so well, but because of since we know the origin story so well, something like Into the Spider-Verse plays into that perfectly. It's a perfect kind of meta commentary on the origin story.
True.
Well, but I think, do you want to go into Spider-Verse or you want to go into the Watch trilogy?
Let's talk about Spider-Verse a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, excellently done. The style was amazing. I love that at this point, with superheroes, like companies are now confident enough that with the audience, that like they can just do crazy shit and like the mainstream audience will accept it. Like introducing all these versions of Spider-Man, you know. Yeah, it was. A lot of people say it's their favorite Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, I will say
why. Yeah,
it's literally neck and neck with Spider-Man 2. Like I would just say this is easily if it's not number one, it's number 2. And the only reason if Spider-Man 2 is number 1 is just because it's nostalgic and like it's the only movie I've really seen on drive-in. So like that's why it's like so.
Yeah, I get it.
Like it's just personal, but Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, it was probably like I had no expectations for it. Like I thought it was just gonna be like I didn't really know anything about it. A lot of people
were just like, okay.
I was just like, okay. I mean, like, it just kind of seems like, just kind of like that kind of like, straight to video sort of cartoon sort of thing that you see with some like IPs. But then I remember the weekend it came out, I remember just seeing like these crazy reviews for it saying like, it might be the best movie of the year. I'm like, really? Like, I was shocked to hear that. And then like, I went to go see it. I was blown away. Like, I was laughing my ass off in the beginning, like, okay, let's start this over. Kind of go into the origin story. Then like it's like it's tongue in cheek with the Raimi trilogy. Then like, but it really like.
Well, I do like how it seems they're kind of following that in a way in broad strokes. Yeah,
and then
I also like Midlife Crisis Peter Parker.
Yes, Peter B. Parker. Yeah, but like, but even like aside from that, just like. The character Miles Morales, I felt like that was like the first time we ever saw like the character on screen. And I feel like, that's just, and the way they handled that character was just like that's exactly what what the franchise needed. And like, while like it wasn't, while the new Spider-Man was praised, like Holland, it just he hasn't like, I felt like there was never really like any ascent to greatness. It was just very like an acceptable, like in terms of the movies are a bit lukewarm, but in terms of like, but it's just been such a long time since we had seen a great Spider-Man movie. We're talking about over 10 years. Like we get Into the Spider-Verse, which is it kind of like really like, like I think really like pumped more fuel into like people really love Spider-Man. And
true. Yeah, well, I mean, I think Miles Morales like is very like very realistic portrayal of a kid, and like if a kid was kind of thrust in this situation, what would happen? I felt like there's, even though like it's animated and it's like there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on, it was very grounded and like so I feel like this is how a kid would react when getting thrusted into this crazy situation,
And even like the casting choices in this film, I mean like Nicolas Cage is the best. I fucking love Nicolas. Like what was it, Noir Spider-Man? Like fucking like, or even like Peter Porker as John Mulaney. Like It's like the casting choices were great. Like Brian Tyree Henry as like his father, like super good casting choice. Like just like these little moments and I'm just like, fuck, dude, like that's why people love Spider-Man. Just like, I mean, yes, the character is great, but like the decisions that they make with their stories is just like really on it. So, and even even like we haven't really discussed much the animation choices of that film, and like I feel like that's the most like that's probably the closest film that looks like a comic book. Like it straight up looks like a comic book panel.
Yeah, true, and it really takes advantage of the format, and it's like that cool like 2D 3D hybrid, but because you see that sometimes, but it was done very well in this one.
And like I think the scene that's been dissected the most was Miles Morales at 12 frames per second. Do you know about that scene, right?
Which one?
So it's where they broke. It's when they broke into it's right after they break out of the whatchamacallit, they got the hard drive from Octavia, like Octavia or something like that. Like I'm blanking on the actual company's name right now. But after they broke out, Peter and Miles, they're like swinging on the trees. They're like webbing. If you look at Peter Parker, like that Spider-Man, he's moving at a rate of 24 frames per second because he's very fluid. He's very experienced. Miles Morales, he's moving at 12 frames per second. He's moving on twos because he's very inexperienced Spider-Man. But as he starts getting in the swing of things, as he's like matching Peter's speed, he begins slowly going to 24 frames per second.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, go back to that scene, YouTube it later. But like, if you see Miles is moving on twos while Peter is moving on ones. So just like it's a super little subtextual thing that it's a little you would it's just like a subconscious thing. Is like something's there, but you just don't know what it is. That like Peter's clearly the more experienced than Miles isn't, and it's just by that little technique, that animation technique. Because in old style cartoons they would do it on twos, shoot at 12 frames per second. So it's just like bringing in like a classic animation technique to kind of show a character trait.
That is inventive, yeah.
Yeah. So
do you want to move on to the Tom Holland movies?
Just one more note. The one scene that gives me chills when I watch it is where Miles takes the leap of faith. I think that's like that scene, that whole sequence gives me chills, where like he takes the leap off the building and then like it's the whole like inverted shot of him like diving down with the skyline of Manhattan. Gives me chills. So I'm like, that's the scene I go forward to like when I go see that movie. And I can't
wait for the next one. The teaser just came out.
I haven't seen the teaser. I've got to check it. I'll check that out. All right. But yeah, we'll move on to the Holland trilogy now. So
what do you think about this incarnation of Spider-Man?
Well, I think we covered most of it. That like it might be it's probably the best of both worlds in terms of like him being like nerdy and witty. It's still like I'm still like mixed about like which one is better, Maguire or Holland. But I will just say like Holland, it was always Maguire, but with this new one, the like No Way Home, Holland might be better. It's really tough. It's really tough.
Yeah, I mean, I think the portrayal, I think you could say like the acting, is neck and neck with Maguire and but yeah, I guess it's hard to say, which is because like each Spider-Man has its own direction, actor, writing, scenarios, villains. So it's kind of, I'm not sure. For me, it would be Toby or Holland. But I do. I like how he actually. Well, he was 19 when he was cast, so like, and he looks like a teenager. So I appreciate that. Unlike the other two, like Tobey Maguire's like 26, playing an 18-year-old, did not look it at all. But yeah, actually, well, at this point, Tom Holland's like 25, but he looks younger. So
I'll also say like What's interesting about again, I feel like I'm pulling for Kevin Smith again. I heard him say this, and I agree with him.
Sure.
What's interesting about this portrayal about Spider-Man is that he has a Queen's accent. He speaks like a New Yorker. So like that was something that's been missing in the other Peter Parkers. It's just like it's very general American kind of East Coast accent.
True.
Holland's the only one with a New York accent.
I did not pay attention to that. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, like it. But yeah,
yeah.
Just,
I like.
go ahead.
Oh, go on. I like how the at least the first two Holland movies are like a teen comedy. You know, they kind of fit in that genre because a lot of Marvel movies that they're super another genre.
I'm sorry, dude. Can you say it again? You just cut out for a sec.
Well, I like how it's a teen comedy. So then, so like a lot of Marvel movies are superhero movies, but in addition, they're another genre.
Yeah, like I think that's what the Marvel films are trying to send out to be when they get these auteurs. They just want these kind of like hybrids between like, okay, this is like our kind of look, but you can take it whatever like kind of story style you want to go into. So like I would just definitely for like Spider-Man, it was very much influenced by John Hughes films. Like it feels like it feels like a Ferris Bueller's Day Off sort of thing. So
yeah, that's a good influence for that. Yeah. Well, it's like in each of the movies, he has a different mentor. So it's like Tony Stark in the first one. The second one, it's Nick Fury /
Mysterio in the first half. Yeah.
And then the third one, it's
himself,
Doctor Strange.
Well, Doctor Strange, but himself.
Sort of. Yeah. It's like it's almost like he's looking for a father figure.
Yeah.
Constantly, in a way. You know. So like because Uncle Ben's like not even mentioned at all in these movies. So we're not even sure what's the deal with that, but we can assume that he died and now he's kind of he's still young, so he's looking for some kind of a father figure.
Yeah, and like I feel like I like the direction that they kind of morphed the Aunt May Uncle Ben character. I felt like that was a good choice. Like
it worked well, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we're just kind of merging the three together, but I feel like that's fine. Like what I will just say, like, I like the consistency of the villains of these three films. I mean, like, and they were like, because Vulture, super well cast. They put definitely a lot of time into it. Great performance by Michael
That scene with where they're in the car, where he figures out that,
there he's just like, he's looking in the rearview mirror and then like turns back with the gun. I'm like, yes. Like, and that was like right when he was coming back too.
So much tension,
And of course, like, who better to play it than Michael Keaton? He just like was Birdman, like, reference Batman sort of deal. Like, there's no better person to play Vulture. Come on. Such a perfect casting.
Yeah, that was really well done. And I like how both him and Peter Parker were a product of Tony Stark in a sense.
Yeah, I felt like that was
almost like the best and the worst of Tony Stark in one.
Yeah, like honestly, that's what I like. I completely agree, and I feel like one thing that's been like it's lightly touched upon in the franchise, but not really enough. It was explored a little bit in Civil War, was definitely the consequences, the repercussions of the destruction, and I like that they kind of took like the working class dad approach, and it just seemed like
and the twist too. Oh, go on.
Oh, no, go ahead. Like that was pretty much all I was going to say.
I was just saying, like, both of them are working class, but then, although with that house it's clear that he's made some money in recent times, but the twist that he is the father of the girl that he likes, I thought, that twist was like kind of it comes out of nowhere, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah, and I just like, and I remember I remember smiling a little bit when I watched it. I'm just like, ooh, I'm into this.
Yeah. So it was. How do you feel about people saying that the complaint that he's like Iron Man Jr.?
Vulture?
No. Spider-Man in the MCU.
I mean, I think if that is I don't know if that could be really a complaint, because like it's also one of those things like that was made very beginning early on in Spider-Man 1. Like I wanted to be like you and I wanted you to be better. So I get there's an essence of Tony Stark in Tom Holland, but I think like it's gonna be because I feel like they're both witty characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like
Yeah,
I feel.
Go on.
No, I mean, I feel like if it's a complaint, I'm like, well, I feel like you're really nitpicking right there, just because, well, that's always been the character of Spider-Man. And if you're going to complain, well, like, okay, well, then you're complaining about Tony Stark, and like, that's kind of been like what made the character so great with Downey Jr. portraying it. He's like, and again, like you're talking about a mentor-mentee relationship, but you're gonna have your influences from that. So just if it's a complaint, I feel like you're really nitpicking right there.
Sure. I mean, there's definitely like, because like he's given this suit, and like you can, he's like given a lot from Iron Man in a lot of ways. So it's like you don't see Spider-Man as much doing his own working class thing,
Yeah, like
even if those are his roots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, like that's what makes the ending of the third one so great. But I will just say, like, I could definitely get that feeling of like feels like a Spider-Man Jr. in the second one, where like, oh, his suit's destroyed, so he's having like a machine make his suit while playing AC/DC sort of deal. So like it was supposed to be like a callback to, of course, the first Iron Man and a reference to Tony Stark's passing, but I could definitely get that from the second one.
Happy Hogan's like, you're not Iron Man. Then the next scene he's like, okay, then why are there so many Iron Man references?
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I still think he's his own character. It's like he already had the genius intellect before, and it's shown. So it's not like he's just given all this stuff and he didn't do anything on his own. And he exists in a universe that already has a lot of superheroes, so it makes sense. Like honestly, more heroes should get Stark Tech. I don't know why they don't.
Yeah.
Just because it's there, but.
I mean, like to an extent that they do. I mean, like I feel like Ant-Man is a bit of a product of Stark Industries. You have what is it? Anthony Max Falcon. Falcon's a bit of a product. Captain America is. Hulk is its own thing. But you could definitely say three of like that kind of lead characters are a product of Stark Industries.
In some ways, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Ant-Man's is from Hank Pym though.
Definitely, but even then, it was revealed in Endgame that like they had worked in this, like him and Stark had worked in the same facility, or like someone. Okay, so they're bound to cross paths. So there have been some influence there at some point. So I think I'm just trying to cross hairs at some point to make it work.
Sure.
Yeah.
What do you think about Mysterio, Jake Gyllenhaal?
Really good performance. I will just say maybe it's a little bit too tongue-in-cheek where he's doing his big reveal. It's definitely like over the top, but he's really having fun with it. And I would just say I was definitely the second one is probably I was least excited for. Like, if that makes sense. But Mysterio, I thought it was a good performance, and I like that there was that twist. I like that he was like, kind of portraying like I did kind of like the twist in the middle, but I felt like you were just kind of stretching believability a little bit, where he's just like a little bit too bitter at Tony for just like for his one comment, and then like I think you're kind of stretching it.
I mean, I feel like, well, like those two, like Vulture and Mysterio are more their origins have to do with Tony Stark and not Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
So they're more Tony Stark villains in that sense. But also, like Spider-Man's a product of Stark to a certain degree as well. But I liked that origin. I thought it was interesting. It was fun, and I feel like Tony Stark has thrown a lot of people under the bus over the years, so I feel like it makes sense.
Yeah. No, I believe it, and that's fair. I feel like it was just too much of a believability stretch for me, if that makes sense. Even with the callback to the scientist in the first Iron Man as being like an accomplice, I'm like, I feel like you're stretching it. I felt like that was stretching it.
I liked that. You know what? That actor is the kid from A Christmas Story.
Really? That's oh yeah, sure. No, you're completely right, because I just thought about that. Like, no, I remember you mentioned, that's completely right. It's Ralphie. Fuck.
Yeah, that's Ralphie. Working for two different bad guys.
Ah, there we go.
But I like that continuity. I thought that was fun.
Yeah, it definitely creates like a nice thread.
And then you mentioned the ending, the
Oh no, go ahead.
The continuity, the shared history with the MCU has with the audience, I really like. but you mentioned earlier, like the ending with J. Jonah Jameson revealing that, or Mysterio revealing that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. That's how it ends. You know, I know you talked about that before, but yeah, it is a really good ending.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like with Mysterio ending, I'm just like, okay. I mean, like, you know, no surprises exactly, but like, you know, and it was serviceable. I mean, like, and I like Jake Gyllenhaal. I felt like, you know, he was a person who I wanted actually to be a villain. Like, if he was to be in a superhero franchise, so like, I'm actually glad he was a villain as opposed to like being a hero. If that makes sense. I feel like he just doesn't get enough of those roles where like, and because I kind of like his roles like Nightcrawler and like Prisoners, where he's more a conflicted moral character. But but like the ending,
brought a little bit of Nightcrawler into Mysterio.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, going into that ending though, I was like, I was just kind of like, okay, and then like of course there's always like some mid-credit scene, and then like when you see like J. Jonah Jameson revealed, I'm like, oh, I was just like eyes wide open, so happy. I'm like, J.K. Simmons is back. I'm like, what the fuck? I was so happy, and he's so fucking hilarious. But that was supposed to be the
love the update too.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, go ahead.
I love how they update the character to be like Alex Jones, basically.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that. Like, yeah, just essentially, yeah, this kind of like right-wingy, like, you know, kind of like conspiracy theorist-esque like character. Yeah. And then like and what was hilarious is just
So do you want to talk about the new one then?
Definitely yeah, just a sec. One more comment I just want to make.
What are your overall thoughts on the new one?
Yeah. So one comment I just want to make real quick is that was supposed to be the original ending, because I think at the time they didn't have a new contract for Tom Holland to be playing more Spider-Man, right? I think it was supposed to end there.
It was about the Sony Marvel deal. Didn't have it for a third movie. So I think Sony might have done their own Spider-Man 3 without Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not so, but then luckily things worked out, and you know, we got Spider-Man back. But yeah, there was for a little bit it looked like we might not get Spider-Man 3 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but luckily it all worked out.
Yeah, exactly. And then yeah, kind of going to this third one, and then like if I put Spider-Man 2 as the top, Into the Spider-Verse a second, I'll probably have to put No Way Home as like number 3, to be quite honest. It's definitely the best one, like of the Holland trilogy or the Watch trilogy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I need to give it more time to like have proper thoughts about it, but yes, it was very well done, and I think it lived up to the hype in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like I
also,
think
you know what's funny? No new villains. I if you think about it, all the villains are old villains.
Mm-hmm. They're like all established, and that's that's I feel like if this is me nitpicking, like because yes, while they're all established villains, I feel like it also feels like that bit where they're just cashing on the nostalgia. You know what I mean? They're just like it just feels like a cash grab on nostalgia. Yeah. But still, like the fact that they were kind of
a lot of fan service, but well done fan service.
Mm-hmm. But I still have to praise that they were kind of able to bridge 3 franchises and get everyone back essentially for these roles. Yeah. So just like you never saw like in the Raimi trilogy, these villains in like all together, and then but the fact that they're the fact that they're like paired in with the Amazing Spider-Man villains, and the fact that like, you know, they're all together like in this sort of Sinister Six way, I'm like, you know, you kind of have to praise that they were able to they were able to have the option to bring all these players back and actually did it. Yes, it's a fan service sort of thing, but like, the ability that they were able to do it and actually follow through with it, that's commendable.
I agree. Although it's funny, I think each villain is as good as they were in their original movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like Doc Ock, Green Goblin, excellent. Sandman, okay. Lizard, Electro, meh.
Yeah, but like again, I feel like
they were consistent in terms of quality.
Yeah, fair. But I feel like in synergy they all work together. But like again, I just felt like, if you're not familiar with how these characters are established, like with me and Jamie Foxx, I was like, I hadn't seen Spider-Man 2. I was just like, like I get it, like, but
Yeah.
But like I didn't really get the character exactly, but I get that he's there. But like I was most famous for like,
well, it's like this
yeah,
one.
go ahead.
I was just saying this one with Jamie Foxx. It was a different portrayal than in the one he was in, and it was more just like him being Jamie Foxx.
Mm-hmm. That's the vibe that I got.
Yeah.
But like Willem Dafoe, like Alfred Molina, and then like Thomas Hayden Church just like killed it, and they're like the Raimi villains killed it. They were great.
Yeah.
And
the de-aging was really well too. It was almost unnoticeable.
I thought so too. I thought Alfred Molina. I'm like, I couldn't even tell. I thought I was gonna be able to tell easy. I really couldn't.
Yeah, they've really gotten that CGI down really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
also, one thing I wanted to bring up. I was like gleefully when my eyes saw when Daredevil came in.
Oh yeah, that was really cool.
That it was unexpected, and I'm like, they've made it official that like these Netflix series, like these Marvel series, are in the same universe. So like I'm like, that's
at least in broad strokes, but
in broad strokes,
yeah.
but yeah, like no, they're connected, or at least so.
And again, it's another fan servicey moment, but it made sense, like him being a lawyer and everything. I remember everyone in my theater was clapping so hard, and then I even heard a woman moaning for Daredevil, but yeah, it was good.
But to be quite honest, I feel like the Daredevil show was my favorite of the Netflix series. Like that's
definitely.
Like I will say like it's in my probably top 5 Netflix shows like on Netflix. Like I'm also listing it up there with like Mindhunter and Stranger Things. I think it's up there as like a top quality show.
Oh yeah.
So like that's why I was disappointed when like it kind of like Netflix kind of lost the rights. I'm like, I get it when Marvel's trying to reacquire all these things back, but at least gives me a glimmer of hope that like they can kind of get the teams back together to kind of make another season, because I really like the portrayal of Daredevil. Yeah. And also Vincent D'Onofrio, like again, like amazing as Mastermind? No, Kingpin. I don't know why I said Mastermind. Kingpin.
Yeah, he's excellent in that role.
Yeah.
What do you think about Doctor Strange in this movie?
Serviceable, I think. I mean, like, I feel like there's not like that much for him to really do other than like, okay, he's there in the beginning and then like there at the end. But I
feel like it was kind of a contrivance of him like being trapped in that like dimension that Peter was able to trap him so easily for so long. I felt like that was a little, I thought that was kind of a big plot hole.
Yeah. I could agree with that. And plus, like, I thought like it was going to be something where like Benedict Wong would have to get him out. Like, but like, I thought that was going to happen. Didn't, but like, I'm just like, but yeah, I think that's a little bit of a stretch where like, there's no way like, Strange would have been trapped for that long. Like, I feel like he would have been able to get out of the way much faster. Yeah.
And then I felt that I liked that Peter was like, we gotta like redeem these villains. But then it's like, well, you could have redeemed them. Like, why did you have to bring them over to your aunt's or to, I guess it was Happy's spot? It felt like such a huge risk. Like, he could have done that in a safer way.
Yeah, you could have just left them in the cells and be like, especially with like Doc, which like who's clearly like, you know exactly what's wrong with him. like, you don't need like you, so like you could just like make the chip as he's in that cell block. And I'm like, okay, now I'll bring you out. So yeah, it's definitely a stretch of logic.
Yeah. Well, I also think there was a problem where it's like, I feel like most of the redeeming that he's talking about is just finding cures for their powers. There wasn't as much of like how Tobey Maguire would like talk to the villains and have a heart to heart with them. I feel like it was more like, well, let's get the antidote to this, But I appreciate his idealism,
I think it really did bother. Yeah, it really did bother me though that like the Sandman, like he was a good guy like at the end of Spider-Man 3. So it was just weird that like he was like teaming up with the Goblin essentially. I'm just like, no, like I felt like the way he entered was appropriate, but the way it was kind of wrapping, I'm just like, no, that like I don't agree with that.
I think
that would happen.
the motivations were a little iffy.
Well, what would have been more believable is if there was like an internal like if there was a conflict between the villains, like if Oct and Sandman were together, and then say like Goblin and then like the other two, like the Lizard and Elektra. I don't know Jamie Foxx's one. But like I felt like there should Electro, yeah. So like if those I can see those three being together. I just didn't see like Oct and Sandman being together. Just after Oct had the chip in him, just didn't make sense.
Well, because he got redeemed when that happened, basically.
Yeah, and exactly.
Then he was. I forget what did he do after they fixed him? Because there was that because then Green Goblin turned on everyone. It's like what did he do in that?
I think he just like went with him, and because like, and again, it's just one of those things that like, I feel like even then, I just don't even feel like the chip was necessary, because in the original Spider-Man, Peter talked him down. So I felt like it was one of those things that like, yes, that was like how he lost control of the arms, and like arms controlled him, but he would still, but like in the original Spider-Man, in Spider-Man 2, he was redeemed essentially when like Peter was talking him down. And I feel like you didn't need to like do a chip change. I feel like you could have worked out a way, like, you know, where you could have talked him down to some degree, because it's already happened. It's already established of where that's possible.
Yeah. But what do you think about the other Spider-Man coming into the picture?
Honestly, my crowd was like, the audience was cheering. Yeah. Like they were so happy.
Same.
Yeah.
I love that their interactions were great. The three of them.
Mm-hmm. Definitely super fun. And like, honestly, when they're all in the lab together, like, you could tell like they're just having a good time. Like that was definitely like,
their chemistry is really well done. And like they talk about their differences and like, you know, and I like how like when the three of them were in the middle of the battle, and then like, all right, teamwork. And the older two Spider-Man are like, oh, I've been solo. I've never worked on a team. Then the new Peter Parker is like, wait a minute, I've been on the Avengers. I kind of know a thing or two about being on a team. So you know,
are you at the Avengers? Are you in a band?
Role, you know?
Yeah.
What was it?
Are you the Avengers? Are you in a band?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There was a lot of good quips and stuff, and callbacks to previous Spider-Man movies, and well, with both of the characters, the older Spider-Man, it's like we were checking in on them. It wasn't like they were wrapping up any stories of theirs. It was kind of just like, hey, how are these guys doing? You know.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But yeah, I felt like, but yeah, definitely like one thing that worked well in the film was how they're kind of like talking about their ghosts, of what we mentioned earlier, where like how Tobey Maguire had Uncle Ben, how Andrew Garfield had Gwen, and then now he's having his moment with Aunt May, and then he's about to kill like Goblin for that. So I feel like that was a very redeeming moment where like the Tobey Maguire just like prevented him from doing it. I felt like that was a very I felt like that was like a good way to handle it.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I liked the simplicity of the final battle at the Statue of Liberty, because Peter Parker's like, yeah, villains are gonna be here, come at me, you know. I appreciate, although I'm not sure what they did in the meantime after they ran away, but whatever. But and then I like how Doc Ock kind of, you know, was fighting the villains and was, you know, continued his redemption arc.
Yeah. I think one more thing I want to try to note on is definitely the way like the decision to end it was actually quite nice. Like just the kind of like
I liked it.
I was a big fan of it.
Because in there another big criticism of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, at least in his first movie, his second too, is that he doesn't really face that many consequences. But this is like his Aunt May dying, and then everyone like him having no relationships with anyone whatsoever. No, even though it's nice that no one knows he's Spider-Man, but then it's like, well, his relationships are completely gone now. I think he has to kind of start from you know, the ground up all over again.
Yeah, it's like he hit reset.
No Stark Tech.
Yeah. but that's what's kind of going to make it fun when they do make the next one. It's like, okay, it's actually going to be like an interesting kind of iteration of like what the Peter Parker characters were in the previous franchises. It's him like, okay, like he's like, it's just him now. Like it's just him making his own suits. Like
it's like a back to basics. Yeah. Like this feels like the ending of a trilogy, and then hopefully there'll be another one.
Yeah, fair. And here's the thing, even if the trilogy were just that trilogy, I'm like, okay, the trilogy stands well on its own. I felt like it was just like, if it were just in there, I'm like, it's neatly wrapped up.
I agree. Completely agree.
Yeah. But other than that, I don't really have too much left to really note on it. Like, I like the little, there was the little, again, like most of it's just like, okay, characters coming back, like we already know all these villains. There wasn't really too much time with the villains ever really talking to each other is really a thing. I don't think there was really much from them other than
I did appreciate their interactions. I liked the moments they had together. Yeah, I mean, I think overall I really like this movie. I like what they did. I like how they were able to bring all these elements together and it worked. But I think a lot of the details, like you can nitpick it to hell with the details. Like Doctor Strange disappearing, these villains are kind of inconsistent, and also just the logic of the whole multiverse. I feel like there's a lot of like logic issues with, and a lot of plot holes. But overall, it was well done.
Yeah, agreed.
And I loved it, and I had marathoned them all. So like seeing all the villains and seeing the old Spider-Man come back, it was it felt very triumphant.
Yeah. All right. But I think that's gonna wrap us up here. I think we're going pretty hard on time. But do you have any more notes you want to cover?
No, but I've just been like living and breathing Spider-Man over the last like few weeks, just marathoning him and like, and now and that was like, the new movie was like the finale, and it feels like, it felt like, the movie being so great and marathoning them all, even the ones I didn't even like too much. It was like, it felt like it was all worth it,
Yeah, no, I agree. And it just felt like they kind of really stuck the landing. And again, like we still have another one to look forward to by the end of the year. We saw Spider-Man, we thought Into the Spider-Verse too. So
less than a year.
So much. Another one. So much going on.
We'll be getting a Spider-Man movie every year pretty soon.
Yeah, exactly. All right, man. But also just one note, I kind of like the subtle hint in the beginning with J. Jonah Jameson that like he was just some like scrappy YouTuber that ended up getting like that one little breakout. Then he gets this huge fucking like studio. Like that little hint in the beginning. Yeah, but
that was a nice detail.
Yeah, but like again, just like that. Fucking J.K. Simmons, what a guy. Yeah, like that. Yeah. That's a good dude. Hopefully.
Yeah, well, he's very talented. He's a great actor. Yeah.
All right, but yeah, I think that'll wrap us up, man. But thanks again for doing the chat. Yeah, definitely a lot of Spider-Man shit that we went over, but I'm sure we'll make another time to do another one. But yeah, definitely. I think we're in agreement that like we're not sure about Holland or McGuire being number one, but like we know that like they're number 1 and 2 is really the debate.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, gotcha. All right. Sounds good, man. Well, take it easy, dude. I'm sure we'll catch up at some point. I'll send you my set, by the way. That's one thing I'll do cool. Soon. All right. All right, dude. Man. All right, man. Be safe. All right.
All right. You too.
All right. Merry Christmas. If I don't talk to you anytime soon.
Merry Christmas to you too.
Thanks, man. Cheers.
All right. See ya.